And we are live. Grubby Talk live here on a Tuesday night after the 2023 Grubby Championship. Man, what a crazy weekend. It's hard enough that it's Patoka. It's hard enough that we have cold fronts coming through. And then you wake up and jump on the water, it's 39 degrees. But you know what? No matter where you fish, how you fish, or who you're fishing with, somebody's going to find them, and many others, like most of us, aren't. It's just one of those things about fishing in tournaments. But the greatest thing about it is we belong to the best club in Indiana, and I'll even dare say the Midwest. Why? Because I can. Who's going to argue with me? Welcome, everybody, to Grubby Talk. My name is JT Hickman. I am the host for Grubby Talk tonight. Man, we're going to have a couple of special guests coming in and, somebody else in a little bit too. But I want to do a quick recap while it's still fresh in my mind for those who weren't at the event this weekend. Man, you missed out. But I know there's some folks who do river events and some folks who do lake events. And then, man, it was still awesome. I love the fact that this year they added a different element to it to bring more people in by adding a team event on the day one of the tournament, and that was really cool. We had 21 different teams. We did the random draw of the people the previous, the Sunday night before, and then everybody kind of had their teams built out by the time we started on day one. Lucky for me, I got drawn out with my brother and another fellow veteran, Dominic Martin, and we had a good time. I mean, really, we did. Gave Jeremy an excuse to come down and fish Patoka a little bit. And of course, we were just having a hoot. But let's talk about that a little bit. The team that won consisted of Corey Rucker, Joshua Hall, and George Nemeth. And they came out with a total of 51 3/4 inches, probably anchored by Corey's amazing start to the day where he had like a 20 and then a 19. Like the first 20 minutes of the tournament. So good job, team number 20, for just breaking everybody down on day one and just taking the lead from the get-go. And what a day. Want to also cover the two big bass winners of the weekend. Day one went to Caden Zeck with a 20 1/4 inch largemouth bass. And then day two, my teammate Dominic Martin must have moved areas because he put up big bass of the tournament, which is 20 3/4. So congrats, Dominic. Congrats, Caden. You guys caught some tanks. I know there was like some 20s caught in pre-fishing. And then I think even on the first day, there might have been like 3 20s caught. But then those ties are broken throughout the day by your next biggest bass. So I had to give a shout out to those guys for being, the big bass winners. Matt Kiefer won the drawing for the Hobie Hammer. He won a new Hobie kayak. He said his wife was going to claim it from him, but I don't know if he's going to play that or not. But he actually got that. Chris Hildebrand took it down to him and delivered it to him on his way back from fishing the Bass Nation event at Susquehanna. So congrats, Matt Kiefer. Finally got your name right. Yeah, I've been practicing. Congrats, Matt, for winning that kayak. And thanks for Sun Valley Sports for taking care of that. Top lady of the event, Missy Deneau, who added on top of that because I think she finished 16th overall. Great performance. And she was the winner of the top prize, the thing that everybody wants to go fish for, besides the coveted title of champion. She won the drawing for the On the Water Innovations trailer. So congrats to Missy out there for winning that trailer and being the top lady angler of the event. Want to do one more quick recap? Let's cover the top 10 because, hey, those folks all earn it. I mean, they do a really good job. So finishing in 10th with 112 inches was Anton Hayes. Finishing in 9th was Casey, I'm going to get names wrong, Rabos with 119 3/4 inches. Finishing in 8th was Caden Zeck with 121.75. Number 7 was Chad Cummings with 123 1/4 inch. Number 6 was James England with 126 inches. Top 5, Steve Martin, 127 inches. Fourth place, one that everybody had their eye on, was James Miller, the rookie, who won 2 different AOIs, ended up in fourth with 127.5 inches. I got to give a shout out to you got to say he's the rookie of the year. There's no getting around that. I don't think we have that award, but I just made it up. Third place, one of my cabin mates for the weekend, Nate Goodwin, with 130.25 inch. And then the top 2, well, we'll call that out here in a minute. But before we get started in talking to our 2 first and second place winners about, how their whole weekend went, I got a quick guest that I'm going to bring on because I now see him in the green room, who's going to be talking about some of the events coming up since GRUBBY is a KBF club. We do have some KBF events coming up, so let's bring on Mr. Hoover, our good friend and sponsor for you gave away a good price for somebody for something, but I don't remember which one it was. But I think it was $1,000 gift card to somebody, and I don't remember who it was. But Chad, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good, man. Just dog paddling up a waterfall. I've been to 2 conferences in the last 3 weeks, and those are tourism conferences where we build our relationships.
Yep.
Really great, really well received. A lot of people are like, dude, since I'm taking over doing that part of the business, it was unreal how much interest there was that had gone unfulfilled. Lots of opportunity for me to grab funding and relationships for grassroots organizations and our ambassador series, like we've done in the past. One of the things we're going to do in this off season is, instead of making it a secret that we support all of these clubs and trying to figure out how we're doing it, we're going to come up with a formal way to submit to KBF for a grant. And, we're going to support as many clubs as we can, as aggressively as we can, for the ones that are doing well, to support KBF and to support the growth of the sport. Because one of the things that we've always done is invested in the grassroots. And, even with our shortcomings through the last year that have all been, well documented and owned, we still have supported a ton of clubs. I've got a bunch of clubs that I'm sending, money to this year for their AOIs and for their support of KBF. And we're just going to come up with a more formal way of doing that. And,
right.
I've had a couple of great conversations with GRUBBY about next year, talking about we're still going to support GRUBBY, maybe not to the level that we've done, because honestly, GRUBBY's been our biggest expenditure as KBF for an individual organization, because I've really believed and still believe in what GRUBBY's doing. But man, we're just so overwhelmed with opportunity right now. One of the things that I've had to back up and do and say is to say, hey, how can KBF best integrate and continue to do what we do, but at the same time complement all the other things that are going on out there? And to be honest with you, it's through the state challenge series. It's through the stuff that you can do while you're doing other things. Just case an example, today I was excited to see Bass announce their schedule, and but I also realized I had not done a great job of reporting the fact that our schedule's already out. In that we, as the events are approved, we've been posting them on Fishing Chaos. We haven't built the event pages yet, and we haven't specifically released it like, here's a schedule graphic. But if you go to Fishing Chaos, you click on KBF and you click on tournaments, you'll see 2024 Trail Series. And some of those events have been there for 4 months, 5 months. The most recent one that we added, which unfortunately is a conflict with Bass, is we have Sandy Cooper on May 18th and 19th. Not exactly, really close together, but going to pull from a lot of the same demographics. But the one thing I'm excited about for that is, hey, maybe if all the hammers go fish the Bassmaster event, it opens up the KBF Trail Series to some new blood. The one thing that we can't do is just keep juggling schedules. And as much as we all try to coordinate, there's so much opportunity right now in kayak fishing that we have to, scale back a little bit and then just kind of take stock of things next year so that we can plan better for 25. I actually got the deal done today for the 25 championships. And tomorrow I'm announcing that, and it's already up on the webpage, but tomorrow I will officially announce that we are coming back to Huntsville for the Trail Series Championship next year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, centrally located. Two, it's 2 world-class fisheries. 3, it has a great opportunity to have other fisheries be the 10 location, not necessarily just Duck River Reservoir like we're doing this year, but like there's lots of other great little fisheries that get overlooked that we can shine the light on, give the 10 the opportunity to compete on it, and then simultaneously still have the opportunity for the folks that fished in the championships to have the opportunity to fish the big bass fish off on that Saturday, while the guys that are fishing in the 10 are fishing the 10. One thing that I'm doing for next year as well is moving the championships back to Columbus Day weekend. I went to go mail some sponsorship prizes to one of our clubs, Carolina Kayak Anglers, yesterday or Monday. What is today? Tuesday? Yeah. So yesterday, lo and behold, the dang on post office is closed. So I had to go to like one of those pack and ship places, but I keep forgetting about Columbus Day. And so 5 years ago, we actually did our Trail Series Championship on Columbus Day. I think that was in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It worked out great. So next year, we're going to go back to that so that we can move the Trail Series Championship from a Thursday, Friday to a Friday, Saturday with the 10 on Sunday and the big bass fish off on Sunday. But you still have Monday to drive home if you get Columbus Day as a vacation. And if you don't, then you don't necessarily fish the big bass fish off or come to the award ceremony. You can still drive home. And I just think it fits a lot more people to have that. And I will do a kind of a poll of the group like I've been doing a lot recently. And, I've really had to focus on cleanup, right? Organization. Sam's been working really hard on rebuilding the website in the background. And so sometime between the end of the championships and Knucklehead, or maybe shortly after the Knucklehead series, do the new website unveil, with a focus on community, with a focus on opportunity and outreach, a focus on resources and recognition, and then that education and engagement. And man, the resource page, is going to become the thing that we focus the most heavily on, because as the biggest group in the community, we owe it to the community to allocate the resources and make them easy to find. I know it's frustrating to both new users and to old users to ask a question, hey, what's the best fishing kayak under $1,000? It's frustrating to the person asking it. It's also frustrating to the people that have answered that same question 3,000 times. So if we can build a really good resource library, here's 5 YouTube videos that cover that. Here's 2 blog posts that cover that. Then the members of the group can just grab that link to the resource page and go, hey, man, welcome to the group. Here's a quick place to go at, take a look at some of the resources so that you get a better response when you ask a little bit more informed question. And it's not a brush off, but it's a way to say, we're going to allocate these resources. So right now what we're doing is establishing a bunch of categories. And then Sam's building out the website so that when you click on resources, there'll be a bunch of category icon type graphics, transport, electronics, storage and safety, rigging, different motors, all these little things. And dude, even simple stuff like how to register a motor. Yeah. I get that question 300 times a year probably, and I sit there and I type out the answer. I've never done a video on that and never did a blog post on it. So do an easy step-by-step thing on how to do that. How to paddle, how to launch your fishing kayak, how to select a fishing PFD. All of those things that get asked 10, 12, 15 times a week, we're going to put together as a resource. And then also doing a better job of articulating what the benefits are of being a member and our relationship with small businesses and how small businesses help us and we help small businesses, and as well as, our relationships with our sponsors, and doing a better job of showing our members what benefits they get from our relationship with sponsors. So,
and let me explain to a lot of folks too why that's, so important too, because with events like the Fish Ops Catch 22, with the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series, we've got a whole bunch. I mean, we had probably combined 1,000 or more anglers participate in catch, photo, release for the first time over these last 2 years. And that's their first little, taste of like what it is to fish some sort of an online event or tournament. And what that then does is if they get interested in it, then they go seek clubs like GRUBBY and SIAC and others and start doing more of their local things. So like you said, if you have those landing pages and people can get more information, then they can go join their local clubs. And you know how that goes too. Once you kind of get people into that, then, they get pretty good at it. Maybe they want to go do more of the national events and get up playing with the big boys too. So it's all about taking that new or beginning kayak angler and giving them resources and information to help them get a comfort level and then move up from, one level of online to then in person and then doing clubs, then even, bigger trail and, events around the country as well. So that's really cool. I know you got not a lot of time tonight because you got plans for the evening. So
I got more time than I got more time than I initially thought. Let me answer one thing that I've been getting a ton of messages for today with Bass announcing their schedule. And, we've had our Lake Murray event out for several months now. And then a lot of people don't understand that in South Carolina, there's a lot of different entities. So in Columbia, there is the Lake Murray Country or Lake Murray organization that manages nothing but fishing tournaments and events on the lake. And then there's Experience Columbia. And we've had an ongoing relationship with Experience Columbia now for 5 years. And so this will be our 5th year going back, or 4th year going back to Lake Murray. So because we always do the Indiana Sports Boat and Travel Show and we have a hard time doing the event that weekend, we actually worked it out with Experience Columbia to slide it back to the first weekend in March for the kickoff. And then Bass worked it out with Lake Country in Murray to do it the weekend that we've historically done the event on Murray. Here's what I could tell you: make a week out of it, because Lake Murray that time of year has produced like 23 or 24 personal bests for people fishing over those 3 events, not just in the actual event, but in the pre-fishing and the lead up to it. And so if you're fishing in the bass event, you're pre-fishing for the KBF event, and you're also just having a chance to fish a phenomenal fishery, it's the same body of water with 2 different entities. And the way I look at that is that's a win, because there's 2 different entities investing in kayak fishing. And if you're looking for one place you can go to have world-class fishing, opportunities to get your checks in the box for 2 major organizations, you can fish the KBF event one weekend, you can fish the bass event, or the bass event one weekend and the KBF event the next weekend. In fact, I'm teetering on just doing the first weekend in the Indiana Sports Boat and Travel Show this year, and then carrying my happy butt over to Lake Murray and fishing in the bass event myself, because I very rarely have my schedule line up where I can do that. And so, and then we had locked in our Sandy Cooper event for May 18th and 19th, one of my favorite fisheries. But by the time we finalized everything, there had been so many weekends that we had locked down, that they had locked down, where there was still good fishing, that we put our event out on the same weekend as one of the bass events for, I think, their Guntersville event. But guess what? There's 2 great events on 2 world-class fisheries on the same weekend. Yeah. If Guntersville's closer to you, go to Guntersville. If Sandy Cooper's closer to you, go to Sandy Cooper. You know what I'm saying? And 100%. There's just no reason for people to get into pissing contest or knife throwing contest or any of that. My whole goal all along is to be able to create opportunities for anglers. And, I learned a long time ago, I can't do it all. And over the course of the last 2 years, I really learned that lesson. So by taking the time off from the state challenge series to go out and work on tips for each state leader by the state. And then one of the things that we're doing next year is this thing called featured fisheries, where we're going to take a fishery and we're going to break it out. And it's not going to be an additional entry fee, but it's going to be additional opportunity to win prizes and money in the state challenge series. So my goal next year is to add no less than $25,000 to the challenge series payouts and the championship. And so that's a very aggressive and robust goal, but my goal is to do 25,000 a year for the next 4 years, to the point that we get the challenge series to $100,000 series. Now, there's going to be some things that need to happen because there's still holes in catch, photo, release right now. There's things that, you know, as much as I've talked about cheating and how to cheat, there's still little tiny things. And there's a couple of technological advancements that are coming out in the off season that we're going to be able to do to ensure that we take it to the next level, for that one more level of security for folks both sharing fish and editing and modifying location data and some of that other stuff. And we're working with Fishing Chaos with that on the side. And I just hope that becomes like like an industry standard, that we just continue to evolve and get better. And, you know, a lot of people like to play this like Tourney X versus Fishing Chaos game. What I like is that, just like when we at KBF kind of rested on our laurels and we kind of started to go downhill a little bit, or just, you know, take things for granted, and Bass and Hobie came in, it kind of lit a fire under our butt, you know, simultaneously with me going through a rough patch. When it's all said and done, if you want to survive, you got to evolve. Both of those brands have to compete with each other to evolve. And when they both get better, we both win, because when there was no competition for either one, there was no reason for either one to grow and to offer additional features and to do those things. And so that's the kind of stuff that just gets me pumped up. And that's the kind of stuff I like investing my time, effort, and energy into. And that's also why I try to avoid these, you know, divisive things where every time you post something, there's somebody that's got an agenda or an axe to grind that wants to throw a little jab in there. It's not that I don't want to have the debate. It's that the debate has already been had, and it's like beating a dead horse. And the one thing that we're doing in the rest of 23 and into 24 for KBF, I almost want to get a shirt made with a dead horse leg sticking up with the red circle around it. We're done fighting these stupid fights that we've all fought 100 times, and they're not worth fighting. The internet is undefeated when it comes to arguments. If we want to get together and have an offline conversation as leaders to where people actually hear the other person's argument, then we can get something accomplished. That's what Fish Camp's going to be. That's what these leadership panels are going to be. You know, I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm stupid excited about Drew Gregory's series. The Kayak Adventure series is something that I think we've needed for a long time. It's something that I've flirted with but not had the bandwidth for. Just so happens I simultaneously come out with the smallmouth and the River Series virtual thing. And it's not that we're competing with each other. It gives you an opportunity to do both, and you can compound the return on investment you can get from the time you spend competing in events. And I really feel like GRUBBY and grassroots organizations like that need our support. And I think to a certain extent, both us and Bass and Hobie and everybody trying to be elite, there was this big void of, you know, forgetting about the clubs. I mean, I feel like we did the best we could, but even with what we did at KBF, we still didn't do enough. And so there has to be a major focus on the investment in the new blood getting into the sport and new people getting energized. And, you know, I got to break our arm, patting ourselves on the back. Ironically enough, the Catch 22 and the Catch 5s have probably done more for that than anything else that we've done. And it wasn't an intended consequence. We literally thought, hey, let's do these charities to raise money for these organizations, or these charity events to raise money for this organization and to raise awareness. And then it turned into guys that come into that series are popping up now on the state challenge series, popping up on leaderboards at trail events and at Hobie events and Bass events, and popping up on the other stuff, which is exciting, you know? And I love little stuff like what John J.L. Scott's doing over in Virginia, just doing a free river series that's fun, not uber serious, but it's a way to educate new anglers, get them excited about the sport, get them used to following the rules, get them used to understanding how things work. And man, we just need that, because it all doesn't have to be like super serious competition. Made a post about the whole paddle only thing, and I couldn't believe the freaking response to that. You know what I'm saying?
That's huge.
And so I'm excited about that kind of stuff. And that's where my time, effort, and energy, other than me getting out and doing some events myself with bass and Hobie. If my schedule lines up, that's where my energy is going to go, for next year, is creating that educational content, taking veterans fishing, taking people who really need it fishing, and really formulating the meetup concept of fish camp, because the social part of it is what's going to heal the folks that really need it, not the trying to force a competition down their throat or try to intimidate them with the amount of stuff they need to know to go kayak fishing. Hey, just show up and let's go get on the water,
Yep. All right. I have got the top 2 anglers from this last weekend's event, and I got a whole bunch of people in chat who weren't there who are ready to hear how these two duked it out all weekend long. So give us a quick shout out about last minute. When's the final signups for the state challenge series and the Invitational? Because that event's coming up real fast.
Yeah, next Wednesday. So the event is Thursday and Friday with the Big Bass Fish Off and the 10 on Saturday. So that registration ends next week. So
all right, excellent.
Two things about that. There is no off limits period. There hasn't been an off limits period for it. The only off limits is for the 10 for the Duck River Reservoir, and in 24 there will be no off limits for KBF. The idea sounded good in theory. The problem is there's so many small clubs and groups that you crap on when you come in and you do those things that you force them to either try to move their events or you make the events off limits. And even like with what Bass and I are doing right now, and we don't even know what Hobie's schedule is yet, trying to take opportunities away from anglers because one tournament's off limits would overlap the other one is not something that I plan on doing.
All right.
Let's congratulate some winners. Or you can just kick me out of here and you do it. So however you want to do it.
Yep, I sure will. So coming in second place with, I got to go back and look at the scores again. Coming in second place for the 2023 GRUBBY Championship with 141 3/4 inches is Mr. Wyatt Gard. And the back-to-back winner, 3 out of 4 that he's fished in, our champion for 2023 with 143 inches, Mr. Bryan Sparks. Gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. I wanted to bring Mr. Chad in to get a quick update on, what was going on in the world of KBF and the upcoming events. So holler at you guys for a second, and then I'm going to let him cut out. And then we're going to talk about all the goodness that happened this weekend.
Well, congrats, fellas. I honestly think that the series should run a petition to make GRUBBY off limits to Bryan, to be honest with you, because the dude's just like kicking that butt. But hey, listen, congratulations, man. I know that none of those guys want that to happen. That was just a joke because they want to be able to kick your butt fair and square, the next year. But yeah, man, it's good to see guys that I know who are good dudes that I talked to at the national championship for 45 minutes. Standing around the tailgate or the nose of their boat and stuff like that, are just out there doing well and setting the example. And, there was a post yesterday. This is the only reason I really wanted to come on here tonight. There was a post yesterday about a gentleman that was frustrated about not knowing what boat ramp to go to. Hey, help me break the lake down. I don't know how to find the fish. It's, KBF should be telling us where to go fish. And this is where you should learn that. At events and series like GRUBBY, at ambassador groups that don't have a damn thing to do with KBF, Bass, Hobie, but just clubs that are getting together so you can learn those skills and you can kind of get these guys to rub off on you, pick their brains, ask them questions. But the whole thing about spoon feeding people information just doesn't work, right? It creates a dependency culture that doesn't work. And then if you give that information out and it's wrong, then they get mad at you because you told them where to go and it wasn't right because, shoot, the conditions can change the night before the event or during the event that makes the whole thing change. And so I would like to challenge you, Bryan and Wyatt, as you guys talk about how your season went, talk a little bit about how new anglers should approach getting over that intimidation factor, if that makes sense, of trying to fish a whole lake at once, and I've got a couple of videos on it, but I really would like to not even say anything about it. Just hear from guys like y'all that are consistently doing well, how you approach that, because that really is what GRUBBY is about. It's about that grassroots, getting people invested in the sport. And I think you guys are the perfect voice, to talk about how you overcome that and what you recommend for younger, newer anglers to how they approach it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. You make joke about, I have had some success, but I am who I am because of this club. Every tournament that I go to, every championship that I've won, it's been a blessing because there is a ton of hammers in our field. I mean, Indiana is just loaded with them. We've had upwards of 80, 94 guys. And to best that, it's not a gloating thing. That is pride that I am, I take that as an accomplishment that I will probably never, ever match. I mean, these guys are hammered. Wyatt is always at the top of a leaderboard everywhere he goes. He's come on so strong. And I mean, there's a countless list of guys that can do that. And to speak to the new guys, don't be intimidated by any of us, because I would love to have a conversation on the ramp. My most memorable times fishing whether it's a KBF event, whether it's a GRUBBY event, whether it's any event that we fish, we remember I won that championship, but the stories we remember are the conversations we have on the ramp with people, the new faces we see with people, stepping off of the ramp into your kayak and missing and going into the lake like I did day one. I mean, stuff like that is what you remember. Stuff like that is what makes you want to come back. It's just not just the competition part. It's the relationship. It's the whole gauntlet of fishing, meeting. It's everything. I mean, that's why I got out of the glass boat, because those guys are just jerks, I think. And we love each other. We'll give the shirt off our back to anybody there. Wyatt had a situation where a guy gave him his entire rig, his boat. I mean, we got stories just last year, not last year, the year before. Glenn Lance, the one when Glenn beat me. I lost my remote. I mean, and he had an extra remote. I wouldn't have ever been in that position to win that tournament had he not gave me another remote for my XI3. It's just a community that I love and would do anything for. And that's why I'm here. That's why I fish. That's why I fish out of a kayak. That's why I love it.
And a big thing is breaking down a lake for a new angler. Just look for stuff that you are comfortable with fishing. I'm going to somewhere completely new this weekend. I've got on Google Maps and I've just studied stuff that looks familiar to me, my home water stuff. So, and that's why I did at Patoka for the last 2 years. It's just stuff I'm familiar with and how to fish it, and just go fishing.
Yep.
Absolutely.
100%.
You can't.
What?
You can't.
Wyatt, can I ask you one question real quick? Wyatt specifically. So you tapped onto something that I really think is a fundamental flaw in the way guys approach fishing tournaments, because I probably have interviewed more post-tournament anglers than anybody, right? And the consistent thing that I hear from winners is, I just went with my strength, right? And then the consistent thing that I hear from people that are, say, third, fourth, fifth, or finished just outside the top 10 is, man, I went in there and I tried to do something I'm not comfortable with, right? So, for example, you might not be a strong crankbait fisherman, but you heard by the grapevine that crankbait is on fire just off of deep dock legs on channel swings. So you got on Google Maps and tried to find that, and then you went out there and you tried to crankbait fish, and you never crankbait fished before just because you heard that, and then you didn't do well. Meanwhile, the guy that's really good with a jig went down through that same water and mopped up with a jig, and then after the event, you're like, oh, I'm a killer jig fisherman. So can you expand a little bit more on the concept of fishing your strength and finding somewhere to fish your strength?
Well, you basically explained it. I've tried to pick up something new that I've never thrown or whatever, and go out in the water and try to do that on tournament day, and it bit me in the butt. And maybe didn't catch as many, or maybe not even put up a limit because I was doing something out of my comfort zone and wasn't fishing clean, lost fish or whatever. That's just fish your own style and look for stuff that you're familiar with on your home water. So, just take that where you go.
So, Bryan, I got a question for you, because this is the question I actually overheard you talking about last year. And we actually struck up a conversation about it after we verified your nav lights work and that whole thing. Remember that? So then talking about not fishing something that you're not strong with, but you were talking to another angler about, like, do that when you're practicing. Do that on your own time so that when that type of fishing presents itself in a tournament, that's one of the feathers in your, one of the arrows in your quiver. Because if you guys remember at the national championship, we had a 15, 20 degree drop the first night and another 15, 20 degree drop the second night. And I think half the field was lost and started trying to do things they weren't comfortable with. But the 8 or 10 people that just went out there and did what they were already doing and realized that just because the air temperature changed 30, 40 degrees doesn't mean the water temperature does. And we have a tendency to think the fish feel what we feel. Talk a little bit about building confidence in things that aren't your strong suit so that becomes part of your arsenal, if you don't mind.
Well, that's one thing that I always try to do, like you said, in practice. If there's, there's always chatter about, what's working, what somebody's catching them on, what somebody's not catching them on. So I'll try that for a little bit. To have that in my 8-9 rod arsenal or whatever I've got going on there. But like you said, I'll try to pick that spot out, break it down. And to be honest, I don't really dig into that too much, because my personal opinion, you're on the water for 8 hours. So and if you're not confident in what you're throwing, it affects your casts. Your casts aren't accurate. You're not presenting that bait as well as you should be. You're not looking ahead at the next cast. You've beat yourself because you're not confident in what you're doing. You're guessing. You're fishing, so to speak, for a bait. And that's a huge part of my success, is I'm able to just say, hey, stop that. Don't be stupid. Go to what you're comfortable with. Go to what you've caught fish with. Be confident in that presentation. Throw what works and work it. And 9 times out of 10, I'll eventually figure something out in that aspect of it. But that through doing that, it may trigger something else. I may come up on, some timber or something. And I absolutely, people know this already. I can tell you, I can count on my hand how many times I'll take a spinning rod. I just won't do it. I don't do it. I don't like them. You will never, hardly ever find me throwing a Ned rig. I just can't do it. But I'll figure out something else to do in replace of that that's similar, that I'm comfortable with. That's how I approach it.
So I got one more question, and then I'm going to get JT to kick me out of here so y'all can get my ugly mug out of the screen. And I'd love for both of you guys to answer it, and I'm going to keep listening. I think the biggest, and you sort of touched on it already with what you just said, I think the biggest mistake that the vast majority of anglers make is when they start to struggle, they start to speed up and they start to cover more water. When what they should do is slow down and cover less water more effectively and more thoroughly, right? So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts and opinions on that. JT, please kick me out of here. I'm going to jump on the phone and watch it in the background, but I'd love to hear both of y'all's opinions on that, because I think my observation is people speed up and cost themselves fish. And I'm a power fisherman. I'm like you. I'd rather rip my fingernails off and stir salt than fish a Ned rig. But sometimes you just got to slow down and pick a spot apart more effectively. But again, I want to defer to you guys and get your thoughts on that concept.
Well, I think as a kayak fisherman in general, we have to do that anyway. I mean, we have to start doing that, because we can't just fire up an outboard and travel 20 miles or whatever and figure something else out. We have to pick a spot and we have to pick it apart. I mean, that's our day.
And for me, a good example is day one, For me, it was ready to fall. I was throwing a heavier weight on a Tokyo rig, and it was that fast ready to fall. And day 2, couldn't get bit on it. I had to slow down the rate of fall, and I just started dragging a Nico rig across the bottom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because I mean a lot of people don't realize, and I think you made a good point, and Chad did too. I noticed that last year when I went to my first kayak bass fishing national championship, it's like the chatter all week long was, oh, lipless crankbait, long blah blah blah. And generally I'm a chatterbait guy if I'm going to be doing something like that. But what did we do? We ran to Walmart. We all bought a bunch of freaking, because we didn't bring a bunch of lipless, so we went and got a bunch. And then, we spent, I blanked the first day, not fishing how I fish. I'm trying to be Casey Reed and throwing a shaky head in brush piles and, this and that, just totally not doing what I'm doing, and I had one of those days where I walked out and I'm like, I ran into Christine Fisher and she's like, just go fishing, dude. And day 2, I did. I picked up a Texas rig. I picked up a chatterbait and caught the fish I needed to make the top 100 and go into Friday too. So, you guys hit the nail on the head when you talk about fish the way you fish. But like you said, find areas that work what that work for you. I actually, I was one of those guys last year, first championship with GRUBBY. I went to the spot that I caught fish on in the spring and the summer and one fish each day. And I'm like, they're just not here. I'm doing what I do, but just wasn't the time or place. Went, checked out some other places this year and actually put something together and, coulda, woulda, shoulda had a limit both days, but I did get one the first day and I had the fish I needed day 2, just didn't get them all in the net because I was chasing little ones just to get 5 on the board. It is what it is, but it was me fishing places that were rock quarries that I was like kind of used to with a lot of the strip pits that I fish. So it was similar, like you said, find what you know and kind of go with it. Yep, day 2 had to slow way down, but it was just one of those things. So for those who weren't there and didn't hear Wyatt tell kind of the story of what happened, Wyatt, go ahead and fill everybody in on your kind of tournament days. And then, because to me, this really gets to the spirit of the kayak community and I can't let this story not be told. I was like, I got to have Wyatt on here to tell this too. So tell everybody what was going on.
Oh, definitely. Day 1, everything started out pretty good. I think I put up a limit fairly early. Wasn't a big limit by any means, but midday I made a move to some more submerged timber, just like a lot of the lake has. I started picking some of that stuff apart, and I think at the time I had around 68 inches, which at the time was pretty good for the circumstances and the wind and everything. But I decided to go back to where I started, hoping to pick up another good bite because I had lost a 17 plus incher that morning. So I decided to make a move back. I thought I was in the clear from the standing timber. I was in 20 feet of water, did not see it because of the wind, but there was a timber about 1.5 foot or so below the water. And I smoked it going full speed with the XI3, snapping my motor mount. And whenever I tried to make a little bit of a repair to kind of get myself back, I heard water running. So before this even happened, I had somehow established about a 4-inch crack next to a scupper. And that's when I realized I really needed to get back to the bank because I was taking on water and I was taking on water fast.
Yeah.
So I made my way back to the bank and back to the ramp about 1 o'clock. I got back and I told a couple of buddies what had happened and let them know I got off the water safe. And it didn't take no time. My neighbor at the campgrounds, Ron Irwin, which we've camped next to him for the past couple of years, he had already found out through my wife. And as soon as I got back, he walked over and said, "Hey, I know you're sitting pretty good. If you need my kayak for tomorrow, it's all yours." So that's my whole day one right there. I was off the water early, and I was able to get geared up to go again and do it the next day, just all because of Ron.
So gave up the rest of his tournament because
Yep.
somebody he knew was in the running and wanted to give him an opportunity to at least duke it out to the end.
Right.
Gave up his spot, gave up his kayak,
He seen
and
opportunity, and he wanted me to run with it. So,
yep. That's incredible. But to me, again, that just goes to the spirit of this whole community. If somebody needs baits, rods, reels,
oh, definitely.
it's just one of those things. We'll do whatever we have to do to help each other out too. It's like I found out, George Nemeth, he'd flipped his kayak and was missing a bunch of gear, and I happened to be going down to American Legacy for the open house and ended up, buying a bunch of gear for him to bring back up so he would at least have more stuff to fish with, and he was able to recover out of the water too. But again, I hate that it happened to you, but I love hearing stories like that. But again, because it just goes to show how much we as a community embrace each other and support each other regardless. It's
right.
It's just one of those fascinating tales of the tape at the end of the day that, there's always like those feel good stories. Just
That's
and boom, you end up in second place.
That keeps a lot of us coming back. Somebody's having a bad day in the water, and somebody else jumps in and makes sure you have a better day than what you were having. You're going to come back and do it again.
So let's talk a little bit, especially for the newer folks who are maybe interested in joining a club like GRUBBY. Everyone I talk to, oh, I'm not a hammer. Bryan is notorious for that because I give it to him all the time. But it's one of those things. But a lot of those guys can and do learn from those with more experience who've got the time on the water and things like that too. But if you both would, since you guys kept going back and forth, throughout, kind of talk a little bit about your decision-making processes. I know Wyatt did a good job of talking about find stuff that matches, his fishing style. I kind of want you guys both have opportunities to talk about your sponsors because they do make a difference. A lot of people don't realize that when a lot of people partner up with these companies, it's not just about getting product or whatever. I tell everybody, if you're going to partner up with somebody, you need to be a customer of theirs first because, it gives you a greater appreciation for that partnership. It's not just, here's this thing. A lot of people are actually consumers of the product of the companies. And really, that's why they seek those partnerships. So, Bryan, if you would start a little bit about your tournament weekend and how, obviously it takes a lot of skill, but it also takes good partnerships. And not everybody has that. But I also want people to understand that if they're shopping for, maybe somebody's in a pedal kayak and they want to upgrade to having a motorized, there's choices that you guys make with products that you use to keep you running while you're fishing, be it rods, reels, baits, batteries, the brand of kayak you like to use. It's things like that make good anglers a little bit better. And maybe it will help others, along in their future decision-making if they're looking to get into this a little more too. So, Bryan, if you would, go ahead and tell me a little bit about your weekend and, your day 1 and 2, and then kind of some of the tools and thoughts that went behind it too, so that some of our newer folks can kind of get an idea of what it really takes to be a champion, let alone a 3-time champion in GRBY.
Well, as you know, starting out, I had a lot of people make fun of what I fished out of. I've got tournaments where my first tournament, I was in a sit inside $89 kayak from, I don't even know where I got it, but it was a piece of junk little. It's all about what you can afford at the time, what you can start with, and then do some little subtle upgrades. Everyone's like, what's the best one for 1,000? What's the best? It's, get something that you can afford. Find something used. Everyone's always selling kayaks on here. Find something used, try it out. If you don't like it, if it doesn't fit you, sell it. Get another one. Find something that you're comfortable with that gets you on the water, and then just start building your brand from what makes you comfortable. It all goes down to what are you comfortable with, and then eventually, I've worked my way up to what I think is I mean, I love the Hobie. I love fishing out of the 360. You know, Jim always had that, and he's like, man, you need something. And then, you know, back to when I started, I went up to a $900 feel free Johnny boat, and that's
Yeah.
like, so if you don't know what that is, just go back to an old clawfoot tub, take the claws off of it, put a seat in it, and that's my boat. I mean, it's like paddling a daggum box around. Luckily, I didn't have to paddle it all the time because I put a trolling motor on the front of it, was able to upgrade to the trolling motor and then start moving around that way. Just slowly upgrading and figuring out what's best for me. How can I be comfortable on the water? How can I then present my baits better and catch more fish? But to the tournament this weekend, you know, I've got areas there that I just stick with. Last year, I caught everything on a spinnerbait and a crankbait. I threw my arm off on a spinnerbait and a crankbait, and I couldn't get bit for my life. So I went to my next comfort zone, which I throw a jig a lot. I threw a jig. I couldn't get bit on a jig. Finally, I started catching fish on the jackhammer. The day one, it was cold. It was stupid. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was starting to feel like I wasn't going to find any fish. So just subtle changes. I changed colors. I went to a darker color. I went to a different blade color. I started getting bit. I started putting a limit up together. I ended up with 5 fish on a dark green jackhammer with a gold blade. That put the fish on the board. I had 5 bites. I caught 5 fish. Day one was pretty lucky for me. Day two, the weather didn't really change temperature wise, maybe a couple degrees, but it got cold, or it got cloudy and windy. Just in the past knowledge of fishing, I changed colors again. I went back to the silver blade and went to a white bait, and I started catching fish right off the bat. So I never dropped it. I was chasing bait all week. I was chasing bait balls, and I found where those bait balls stayed, and that's where I stayed. I traveled a little bit just because past history tells me, hey, I caught a good fish here. I need a good fish. Go try it. I would travel 20 minutes, strike out, travel back to where I was, where I'd found fish, and that's what ultimately making that decision to stay on the fish that I knew were there, even though I'd go an hour, maybe 2 without a bite, and then just catch 20 minutes worth of bites and get 1, 2, maybe 3 back to back, and just stick those downtimes out, stay in the area that I was comfortable with and that I knew had fish in it. Yeah. And that's ultimately what put me over the top.
Now, when you say that you spotted there, found the bait fish, were you visibly seeing them on the water, down imaging, side imaging, using your electronics, or kind of what was your process there? What's that?
It was through live scope.
Okay. And Wyatt, you mentioned something about just, maybe getting some new electronics. So is that something that's kind of new in your arsenal this year, that you've kind of going to have that future learning curve? Or what was your weekend like?
Up till this past week, I literally ran a little Garmin Striker 4 just for depth and water temperature. I've never really used electronics, and I was fortunate that my wife had ordered me the upgrade I'd been wanting for quite some time. I just couldn't talk myself into getting it. I didn't think I needed it. But it's got the down scan, side scan, and all that. But come day 2, I didn't have my own boat, so I didn't use it. The boat did have a graph on it. It was just down scan, but I'd already fished everything and knew what I was, already had a game plan. So the electronics, it helped a little bit in the breakdown process, but besides that, I really didn't use them much. But like I said, day 1, I was catching them a lot on a fast rate of fall. Come day 2, I didn't get bit till it was almost 9 o'clock, I bet.
Holy cow.
Not even the slightest bite or anything. I thought, oh no, I started getting a little bit of a pain, and then I slowed down just a little bit through a Nico rig, which I throw religiously everywhere I go. throw that for a while, and I would start hitting isolated patches of timber away from the bigger stuff. And I mean, it was a half a dozen casts in. I'd finally caught one, put it up on the board. I just started running that stuff. There's more isolated patches of timber. A big game changer for me was whenever I figured out the depth. On day 2, all my fish came from between 5 and 8 foot of water. Nothing shallower,
Okay.
nothing deeper. And I would go into a timber field, and I would fish directly behind guys. It might be out away from the bank a little bit further, and I'd stand to fish, and I would fish the submerged timbers that you can only see while standing. A lot of guys are fishing the stuff you can visibly see everywhere. Well, I started fishing everything you can only see while standing with the right glasses on. So,
Yep.
And started picking up even more fish then.
What kind of glasses do you like? Because I know a lot of different choices out there too, and some people may be shopping for Polaroid glasses for fishing.
Right. I got a couple different ones, but the Costas are probably my favorites. But I got a couple different ones for cloudy days, sunny days, whichever. But
So switch it up based on the conditions that make you feel
like
you see what you want to see.
There'll be days where one works better than the other. But
Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
and once I figured out the pattern, I just ran with it. I tied up a second one, a second eagle rig. That way, if I broke off or whatever, I could hurry up and get another one right back in there, because whenever I would catch one, there's always going to be another one close by in that same range. So,
All right, excellent. So one of the things I did want to talk about too, because you both said something about sponsors that you work with that hit me in a couple of different ways. For you, it was discovering that a brand that I'd heard of before through I work with Monster Bass, Thunderhawk. I had no clue they were in Indiana. Can you kind of tell us about their new location and a little bit? Let's give them a little shout out, because hey, we've got a bait maker here in the state, and you know it's cool to know that, and you know have people be able to support kind of those little organizations that are around, especially there in central Indiana.
Oh, I am so fortunate for them. A good friend of mine that I used to work with started working for them. He does a lot of the boat stuff. Excuse me. He does a lot of the boat stuff. But he'd gotten a hold of me and kind of explained the situation. And I'd never heard of him until March of this year. And he kind of told me what they was all about, and we went from there. And which already had a little bit of a past relationship, but then we built it into something bigger. And now they just recently opened their doors in Brownsburg, Indiana, and they make, I mean, all kinds of lures. I mean, and they're always constantly have something in the works, you know, design or, you know, pre-production or whatever. And it's just nonstop. They're veteran owned and ran. I mean, they make anything from square bills, their own unique style of square bill compared to anybody else's. Lipless baits. I mean, they would do soft plastics. I mean, anything. They just recently came out with a deep diving jerk bait and their own tube, but that stuff is always in the works. So, and it's just a real special company. They feel like family to me. And
yeah.
I'm slowly getting all my rods switched over to their rods. I mean, they have a great rod lineup, and they just came out with a new net. I just tested out over the weekend, and it's awesome. The link's there, super lightweight, carbon fiber handle. The net itself unscrews from the handle. You could put a little bit bigger net, a little bit deeper net on there, whatever you prefer, and I'm just so thankful for them. I mean, and actually they gave me a code for anybody that wants to, try a couple of their baits out. GRBY 20 will get you 20% off if you guys want.
Yeah.
So anybody on here, you're free to use that as you please. And I can't thank them enough.
I had to bring it up because as an Army veteran and a member with our group that's affectionately known as the Freedom Squad, who's me, my brother, my buddy Matt, and our friend Ralph, who's in the Army still. We're all Army veterans. And of course, when we see the names of their baits,
Right.
you know, one being the sergeant, another being the A-10 square bill, it rings home with all of us Army guys. So we're like, and these guys are in Indiana. Freedom Squad is definitely going to have to pay them a visit. So yeah, I couldn't let that pass without talking about Thunderhawk some too. So I thought that was really cool.
Something else that really speaks about the company. I don't know the full story. I don't have the card with me at the moment, but a young boy that fishes a lot. He basically designed his own frog, and has taken.
I saw that video,
and he has taken a lot of characteristics from different frogs and stuff, and put it into one that, you know, guys are boiling them, or, you know, doing all these modifications, and he eliminated all of that. And I'm pretty sure that Thunderhawk is, I mean, that they're basically just selling that frog for him. I mean, all the proceeds go to his, you know, basically goes to him. So
yeah, that's really cool.
That's awesome.
It's killer. I mean, it's the right softness. I mean, the hooks are great. The weight positioning is perfect. Yeah, I mean, there's no cutting the skirt down. I feel like it's its perfect length, and it's just awesome. So,
well, if anybody who follows my YouTube channel knows my struggles with the freaking frog, I'm definitely going to have to get one of these to give it a shot just to see if it.
I think it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, most definitely. And Bryan, you know, while we were there, you as our GRBY chaplain, you know, you said something about one of your primary sponsors being a faith-based business. Tell us a little bit about, you know, I don't want to keep you guys too long tonight, but I do want to talk about, you know, this piece of it too. So I wanted to get kind of the personal side of you guys with the guys who take care of you as well. So Bryan, you mentioned, you know, this company. Tell us a little bit about them and you know, what your affiliation with them is.
Absolutely. It's Miller Tech Lithium Batteries. I mean, that company, of course, they're one of our major sponsors. They provided 50 headlamps at this championship to give out, which is huge. They, you know, their batteries are just absolutely amazing. The customer service is absolutely phenomenal. You won't find a better customer service. I've even heard tales of some people having an issue. Actually, they've pretty much destroyed their own battery. It was completely their fault, and the company, you know, replaced it. And they didn't have to. They just did, because that's who they are, and that's what they stand for. They're just great people. You don't have to worry about batteries, because it's probably going to be the last battery you ever buy. It's an amazing fishing team. That Sean Boggs has just been absolutely phenomenal at helping me with anything I need. I've hooked up with them, and I'm a dealer with them for hopefully when I can get the Yak Shack open. And they're a huge asset. I'm blessed to be on that fishing team, on that connection with them. I mean, I hope they stay. I hope I can keep them for the entirety of my ride in my fishing career, because as they say it before, only the best use Miller Tech, and that's true.
Yeah, I know a lot of the hammers around the state, you know, and you can name several pros. I mean, you, Glenn Landstrom, and then you go and start at the top, Jacob Wheeler on down. There are a lot of Miller Tech, you know, pros out there as well, and you know they trust them with their stuff too. So, you know, love hearing that.
Something that speaks volumes. You know, this was the story that I heard. You know, and when it was Jacob Wheeler, they you know, they said, hey, you know, what can we provide for you this year? What do you need? And he told them, I'm good. I'll use the ones I had last year. I mean, for someone of that caliber to say that and to just use what he's comfortable with, what they provided, and just the amount of power that he got from last year, and he was comfortable with it, didn't need anything else. I mean, that speaks volumes of this product. I mean,
I mean, he knows he's trusting his career, you know, with the batteries that he used last year. So that does speak volumes. That's for sure. Well, that's awesome. Gentlemen, I won't keep you too long. I appreciate you taking the time out tonight. And I know Bryan had to drive down the road, sit in his vehicle to get enough signal to be here, but we certainly appreciate both of you being here and honestly representing GRUBBY at the top of the list. I mean, it's
thing
really awesome to be able to do that.
One more thing before we get off here. I think it's super important, and it's a little bit of a it's kind of a I guess a breath of fresh air, they say, but and Wyatt's a big one about it, because every tournament he takes his family with him, his wife, his little kid. We can't do this without the support of our wives. We can't just go and do it. I think it's important for everybody to give them the props that they deserve, because we
100%.
go out countless hours fishing daylight to dark. Our kids suffer, our wives suffer, and we come home and they embrace us and they support us, and we get to do that day in and day out. And glory be to God for them, because we just couldn't do it without them.
Yep, you hit the nail.
Amen.
And I would like to thank one more person, Jim Bailey. He is the reason I'm going to Kentucky this weekend. So I'm going to be fishing out his boat since mine is probably seen its last days. So he's lending me his to make the trip down to Kentucky, and I won't have to miss it. And it's unreal, the support. You know, whenever I got back to the day one check-in, I had probably 10 people come up and offer me boats for day two. And that's just unreal. It wasn't just Ron. I mean, it was all these people. And I'd only told a couple of people, but that word got out so fast, and so many people offered me boats, and it was just unreal. I'm so proud to be part of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, you say that if I'd have known, I would have thrown you in my autopilot and then took my brother's, pedal drive and went where I was going to go fish too, again, just to make sure somebody else was set too. So it's a blessing to be part of the community that we're a part of too. And, I gotta stop before we go. And I want to thank GRUBBY for even, recognizing me for hosting this show here. Caught me completely off guard. I'm sitting here watching all the tournament directors and all the AOYs, the guys who've earned that stuff. And for them to take the time to even engrave it with the voice of GRUBBY and put my name on it. This really means a lot to me too. So I love being able to sit here, and I'm the Chatty McChatterson. I love talking to folks, and I'm pretty sure that's why they brought me on to do this kind of thing too. But I do also love being able to talk to the various anglers, from the very beginners and, those like James Miller earlier this year, and into having you two on tonight too. So I know, Wyatt, you've got Patoka Lake coming up with the, USA Bass Championship going on down there. And then, Bryan, I know you're going to be heading down to the State Challenge Series Championship and Temptational coming up next week. And, of course, I'll see you down there too. So, gentlemen, thank you both for hopping on tonight, taking some time out, sharing a little bit of juice with us. And, man, I hope you all just smoke them over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, man.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end tonight's GRUBBY Talk. Stay tuned in the next episode. Not sure when yet, but I'm going to have either Cole or Ryan Reedy come on with the schedule for 2024, because it's been decided. Talked about it a little bit at the championship this weekend, but once everything's locked down, I'll get Cole and Ryan back on here, and we'll talk about 2024. Thanks for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you all in the next one.
See you guys.